It was the winter of 2004, and 21-year-old Maura Murray seemed to have her whole life ahead of her. A nursing student at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, she was smart, athletic, and close to her family. To most who knew her, she appeared focused, determined, and ready for the future. But in the days leading up to her disappearance, subtle cracks began to appear in the picture-perfect image. Maura had recently gotten into trouble at school for using a stolen credit card to order food. A minor charge, but one that added pressure to an already stressful semester. Friends noticed she seemed distant, distracted, as if something was weighing heavily on her mind. On the night of February 5th, she broke down in tears at her campus security job, unable to explain why. Her supervisor had to escort her back to her dorm room. That weekend, she spent time with her father, Fred Murray. They went car shopping for a new vehicle. Her old Saturn sedan was showing its age. On Sunday night, she borrowed his car to attend a dorm party. On the way back, she crashed it into a guardrail, causing minor damage. Her father wasn't angry, but the incident seemed to leave her shaken. Then came Monday, February 9th. Maura emailed her professors, claiming there had been a death in her family. A lie. She told them she'd be out for a week, and began searching online for directions to small towns in northern New Hampshire and Vermont. At around 3:30 p.m., she withdrew $280 from an ATM. Surveillance footage shows her alone, wearing a dark jacket, her expression unreadable. She stopped at a nearby liquor store and bought several bottles of alcohol. By 4:37 p.m., Maura was on the road, heading north into the cold winter evening. Where she was going, and why, no one knows to this day. The road from Amherst, Massachusetts to the rural backroads of New Hampshire is long, winding, and, in February, often covered in snow and ice. Maura drove her old black Saturn sedan, a car that was far from reliable. It had over 150,000 miles on it, and its history of mechanical problems made it a risky choice for a long journey. Yet on February 9th, 2004, she pointed it north without telling anyone exactly where she was going. There was no sign she had told friends, family, or her boyfriend. Army Lieutenant Billy Roush, stationed in Oklahoma. The only hint was a printout found later in her dorm, directions to the small town of Burlington, Vermont. As she drove, the weather turned colder. It was getting dark, and the rural highways were lined with snowbanks taller than most cars. At approximately 7:27 p.m., a resident of Haverhill, New Hampshire, heard a loud thump outside their home. Looking out, they saw Maura's car stuck in a snowbank along Route 112, known locally as the Wild Amina-Osik Road. The front of the Saturn was damaged, the airbags deployed. Shortly after, a school bus driver named Butch Atwood stopped to check on her. He later told police Maura seemed shaken, but not injured. When he offered to call the police, she insisted she had already contacted AAA. A claim that could not have been true, as there was no cell reception in the area. Atwood drove off, and a few minutes later, another witness saw her standing beside her car. By the time police arrived, just after 7:45 p.m., Maura was gone. The driver's door was locked, and there were no footprints leading away that could be clearly identified in the snow. Inside the car, police found the alcohol she had purchased earlier, along with a box of wine that had spilled on the back seat. Her phone and bank card were missing. It was as if she had simply vanished into the cold night. The night air was bitterly cold as police began their initial sweep of the crash site. Temperatures were well below freezing, and anyone wandering outside without proper gear would be in serious danger within minutes. Officers walked the snow-covered roads with flashlights, scanning the ditches and nearby woods. There were no visible signs of Maura, no fresh footprints leading into the trees, no discarded clothing, no blood. It was as though she had stepped off the road and vanished into the darkness. By the next morning, February 10th, the search intensified. Local police called in state troopers, search and rescue teams, and volunteers. Tracking dogs were deployed and managed to pick up Maura's scent from one of her gloves left in the car. The trail led about 100 yards east along Route 112, and then stopped abruptly in the middle of the road. For investigators, this was a chilling clue. It suggested that Maura might have accepted a ride from someone, willingly or not, and was driven away from the scene. Helicopters equipped with infrared cameras scanned the surrounding forest. Search teams trudged through waist-deep snow, probing drifts with long poles in case she had collapsed or become buried. Every house within a 2-mile radius was visited and questioned. Yet there was nothing. No footprints, no personal belongings, no witnesses who had seen her after the crash. It was as though the road had swallowed her whole. By February 12th, the official ground search was scaled back. But for Maura's family, the nightmare was only beginning. Her father, Fred, arrived in Haverhill and began distributing missing person flyers, desperate for any lead. The question hung heavy over the small community. Had Maura wandered into the freezing woods? Or had someone taken her away before the snow could reveal the truth? As days turned into weeks, the disappearance of Maura Murray became one of the most puzzling cases in New England history. With no confirmed sightings and no physical evidence beyond her abandoned car, theories began to multiply. One theory suggested Maura had decided to start a new life. She was under academic pressure, had recently faced legal trouble for credit card fraud, and was possibly struggling with personal issues in her relationship. Had she decided to walk away from it all? Supporters of this theory point to the email she sent her professors, claiming a death in the family, and her online search for rental properties in New Hampshire. Another theory painted a darker picture, that Maura had been the victim of foul play. The abrupt end of the scent trail and the absence of footprints suggested she may have been picked up by a passing motorist, or worse, abducted. Some locals believe she might have accepted a ride from someone she trusted, only for the encounter to turn deadly. There were also troubling reports from witnesses. One claimed to have seen a suspicious man lurking near the crash site that evening. Others spoke of a strange green truck spotted in the area days before, driven by someone who seemed to be watching the roads closely. Then came the so-called house party theory. Some online investigators speculated Maura might have attended a local gathering after the crash and suffered an accident or overdose, with attendees covering up her death. However, no concrete evidence has ever been found to support this. Even her belongings in the car fueled speculation. The unopened bottles of alcohol, the printed directions, and the lack of obvious injury at the crash scene made the whole event feel staged, as if the accident was just the beginning of a larger plan or a larger trap. Despite hundreds of tips and a growing online community dedicated to solving the case, the truth remained elusive. For every new clue, there seemed to be a dozen unanswered questions. It's been nearly 2 decades since Maura Murray's Saturn was found abandoned on Route 112. In all that time, the case has grown beyond a missing persons report. It has become one of the most discussed mysteries in the true crime community. For her family, the pain has never faded. Fred Murray has spent years canvassing neighborhoods, giving interviews, and pressing law enforcement to keep the case active. Her siblings have continued to share her story online, keeping her name alive in the public eye. The internet has taken the mystery to another level. Websites, podcasts, YouTube channels, and Reddit threads have dissected every scrap of evidence. Some amateur sleuths have visited the crash site themselves, hoping to see something the police missed. But the more the case is examined, the more it seems to resist resolution. Law enforcement has kept certain details under wraps, citing the need to protect the integrity of the investigation. Searches have been conducted in nearby properties, and even cadaver dogs have been brought in years after her disappearance, but nothing definitive has emerged. Over the years, Maura's story has inspired documentaries, news specials, and countless online theories, yet her fate remains unknown. Was she running from something? Running to something? Or did she cross paths with the wrong person at the wrong time? To this day, the stretch of Route 112 remains quiet, almost eerily so. Drivers pass the spot where her car was found without realizing it's the center of a mystery that has baffled investigators for years. And somewhere out there, the truth is waiting. Maybe it's hidden in the memories of someone who was there that night. Maybe it's buried deep in the White Mountains. Or maybe it's a story only Maura herself could tell. If you want to hear more stories like this, mysteries that refuse to let go, make sure you subscribe to Vanishing Echoes, because the next disappearance might be even closer than you think.